They were only 10 when he departed. A hot summer day. Two best friends in front of the fence that separated their worlds. He had vowed to her that he'd come back. Promised he'd return wearing boots and a hat so large that it would shade out the sun. She'd mocked him then, never thinking that a boy with frayed jeans and a broken grin could ever turn into the cowboy he'd envisioned being. 2 decades on, the beat of hooves sounded through that very still valley. And when she looked back, the rider on horseback wasn't a stranger. He was the promise she believed time had taken away. It had been summer 2005 when they'd last laid eyes on each other. Luke Tanner was 10, footloose, and as wild as the gusts that swept across Texas plains. Emma Hayes, soft-spoken and demure, lived on the neighboring ranch, her days spent assisting her mother make pies and tend the chickens. Between the two ranches was an old wooden fence. Sun-faded and tilting, but they'd never let it stop them. That fence was where they met, their castle wall, their trading post, their border between two little worlds that somehow merged together. Luke's dad had been a rodeo type, the sort who never lingered in any one spot for long. When word arrived that he'd found work up north, Luke had to go. The evening before he left, he and Emma carved their initials into the old oak tree near the creek, making a vow only kids could make with such reckless passion. He had said, "When I'm a real cowboy, I'll come back for you, Em. I'll ride right down this road and call your name." Emma had smiled, eyes glistening in the dim orange glow of sunset. "You better," she'd said softly, "because I'll be right here." Then he left and the dust swallowed him whole. Years passed and life rolled on just as it always does. The Hayes farm remained, but smaller. Emma's father passed away when she was 17, and her mother's health declined shortly afterward. The girl who had run barefoot among wildflowers grew into a woman with the burden of responsibility in her hands. She transformed the small family ranch into a small dairy business, working from dawn till dusk. Her palms hardened, her laughter grew hushed, but the oak tree remained near the creek, weathered and time-scarred, and although the carving had worn off, she never forgot. On still evenings, she would stroll down there, her aging dog tagging along, and gaze out into the distance, down the road he had ridden off on. She reminded herself Luke Tanner was just a childhood dream, one of those lovely daydreams life shows you must forget. Yet there were nights she'd find herself wondering if he'd ever amounted to anything, if that rough boy had really become the cowboy he'd promised himself he'd be. And far away he had. Luke toughened up. He died in his teens, and all he left him was a dented saddle and a name constructed of hard work. He worked ranch jobs wherever he could find them, fixing fences in Montana, breaking horses in Wyoming, riding bulls through dusty rodeo rings. Each bruise, each scar, each broken bone was moving him closer to a dream that began at that fence line. But amidst it all, the din, the dust, the cheers, and the isolation, he wore one remembrance, a sun-haired girl, and laughter as gentle as warm rain. 20 years later, he was 30, tired but steadfast, an actual cowboy through and through. But regardless of how many towns he rode through, none were home. One evening, beneath a vast, star-filled sky, he knew at last what he had to do. He packed his saddle, sold his final rodeo horse, and rode south. The drive down to Willow Creek hadn't altered much, still covered in barbed wire, still that same infinite line of golden fields. The town had stilled, aged like all else that had weathered time. Luke's truck creaked as he filled up at the gas station next to the diner. The sign above it was worn now, but inside, the aroma of coffee and warm biscuits struck him like a recollection. "Can I assist you, stranger?" a woman at the counter inquired. Luke doffed his hat. "You might be able to. I'm searching for Emma Hayes, still here?" The woman narrowed her eyes. "Emma Hayes? She owns the Hayes Dairy out beyond Miller Road." "You're a friend of hers?" Luke grinned, the edge of his mouth rising like that same boyish smile. "You could say so. It's been a while." He drove the remainder of the distance, with his heart pounding more fiercely than any rodeo bull would ever dream. The gravel road to the Hayes farm was bad, but when he picked out that old windmill and that rusty red barn in the distance, a lump formed in his throat. Emma stood beside the fence as he arrived in the same place 2 decades before. Her hair was shorter now, pulled back with a bandana, her face bronzed by the sun. There were creases around her eyes, evidence of laughter and loss over the years. She looked up when the beat of hooves sounded in her ears. For an instant she stood frozen. The man riding towards her was no boy. Tall, broad-shouldered, his hat low on his forehead, dust swirling around him like a storm. But when he reined in his horse and tipped his hat, her breath caught. "Luke Tanner," she breathed. He grinned, the same crooked smile that had made her laugh when they were kids. "Told you I'd ride back, didn't I?" Her heart threatened to burst. "You actually did." "I gave my word," he replied flatly. They just stood there, long moments of silence between them, the air dense with all they didn't say. 20 years of letters that never were written. Words never uttered, emotions never planted deep enough. The world had moved, but in that instant, with the sun low and the oak tree looming so far away, it was as though time never had. For the next several days, Luke remained at the ranch assisting with repairs, fixing fences and feeding cattle. He slipped into the pace of her life as if he never left. They conversed late into the nights,